The scent of aged leather and wolf musk saturated the air as I slipped through the service entrance of the Silver Crate, the underground club where humans didn't ask questions and supernatural paid in cash. My hands trembled as I punched in, already 15 minutes late for the most important shift of my life. The suppressant patch on my neck itched, 3 years of chemical camouflage to hide what I was. Or rather, what I wasn't. "Olivia, where the hell have you been?" said by Marcus, the floor supervisor and only other human on staff. He grabbed my elbow before I could reach the locker room. Sweat beaded on his upper lip, and his pupils were dilated with fear. I'd never seen Marcus afraid of anything. "VIP Suite 3. You're serving them tonight."
"What?"
"That's Elena's section," Marcus said. "Elena won't go near them." His fingers dug into my arm, and I smelled the copper tang of his panic. He said to me, "Listen carefully. The Alpha King of Northern Heights just walked in with his inner circle. You keep your eyes down, your mouth shut, and you do not engage. Understand?" My stomach dropped. Alpha King. Alexandro Volkov. Every supernatural in the territory knew that name, whispered it like a curse or a prayer, depending on which side of his temper you'd seen. I needed this job. 6 months ago, I'd escaped the Clearwater Pack with nothing but the clothes on my back and my brother's medical bills burning a hole through every paycheck. The sanctuary where they were hiding him cost more than I made in a month, and I was already 3 weeks behind. Who else is with him? I managed, tying my black apron with numb fingers. Marcus's eyes darted to the security camera, then back to me. His beta, his enforcer, and some visiting alphas. These aren't the ones who tip, Olivia. These are the ones who own the places that have tips. Invisible. Professional.
Silent.
That had been my survival strategy for 3 years. Keep the scent suppressant fresh. Never make eye contact. Fade into the wallpaper until even the wolves forgot I was human. I smoothed down my black shirt and pushed through the velvet curtain into the main lounge. The Silver Crate was designed to make predators comfortable, low amber lighting, private alcoves separated by thick drapes, music just loud enough to drown out the conversations that could get you killed. Everything gleamed, polished mahogany, crystal decanters, and the eyes of creatures who could tear through flesh before you finished screaming. I moved through the space with practiced efficiency, spine straight, chin down, past the bar where a vampire nursed a Bloody Mary that was definitely not tomato juice, past the poker table where a fox shifter was losing badly, toward the back hallway where the VIP suites waited behind reinforced doors. Suite 3, the presidential, reserved for pack royalty and international alphas. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached the heavy door. I knocked once, soft, deferential, and entered. The room swallowed sound. That was my first thought. The second was that I'd walked into a den of apex predators, and I was the only prey for miles. 6 wolves in tailored suits sat around a circular table of black marble. Steam rose from glasses of bourbon. A laptop glowed at one end, displaying what looked like territorial maps. But it was the man at the center who made every instinct in my body scream run. Alexandro Volkov. He didn't look like a king. He looked like violence wearing expensive fabric. Dark hair touched with silver at the temples, pulled back to reveal a face carved from brutality and control. Tattoos crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar, ancient symbols I recognized but couldn't name. His suit was charcoal gray, tailored so precisely it seemed like a second skin over shoulders that could break a man in half. But his eyes. God, his eyes. Amber, glowing faintly even in human form. And when they locked onto mine, I forgot how to breathe. Before we continue, I've noticed that many of you enjoy watching my videos but haven't subscribed yet. Please help support and grow this channel by liking the video, dropping a comment, and subscribing if you enjoy the stories. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Now let's get back to the story. I dropped my gaze immediately, heat flooding my neck. The Luna bond, the myth every shifter child grew up hearing, flashed through my mind before I crushed it down. I was human. Humans didn't have mates. Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Olivia, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with drinks? My voice came out steadier than I felt. I moved clockwise around the table, taking orders, acutely aware of the weight of the Alpha King's stare tracking my every movement. The other wolves ordered quickly: whiskey, neat, vodka, ice, a bottle of the 98 Reserve. When I reached Alexandro last, he didn't answer my question. You're new. Not a question. A statement, delivered in a voice like gravel and silk. 3 years, actually, sir. I kept my pen poised over the notepad, eyes on the paper. A pause. Then, almost amused, the vintage bourbon. The 1962. Neat. I nodded and turned toward the door when it opened. A man in tactical black, his beta, I assumed, entered and moved directly to the Alpha King's side. He leaned down, whispered something that made every wolf at the table go still. I slipped out before the silence could swallow me whole. In the hallway, I pressed my back against the wall and dragged air into my lungs. Something about that room, about him, made gravity feel different. Heavier. Sharper. I made it to the bar, placed the order, and tried to ignore the bartender's knowing smirk. Serving the king, huh?
Try not to spill on him.
Last server who did that got banned from every supernatural establishment in 3 states.
Perfect.
Just perfect. When I returned with the tray of drinks, the atmosphere had shifted. The laptop was closed. Papers were spread across the marble, marked with territorial boundaries and pack signatures. The conversation had dropped to barely audible murmurs, the kind of discussion that ended in bloodshed or treaties. Nothing in between. I distributed the drinks in silence, moving like a ghost. As I placed the crystal tumbler of bourbon in front of Alexandro, my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I never answer calls during work. Never. But the sanctuary had my number for emergencies only, and my brother's condition had been deteriorating all week. After setting down the last glass, I retreated to the shadows near the curtained window and pulled out my phone. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was right. The wolves were deep in debate now, voices low and tense. I had maybe 30 seconds. I pressed the phone to my ear and answered in the only language my mother had ever used for sacred things.
Parakalo, ti stai suneve.
What's happening? The voice on the other end was frantic, older, female. She spoke in rapid ancient Greek, not modern Greek, but the old tongue my mother had whispered to me in the dark, the language of the first wolves, the one that hummed with power even when humans spoke it. My brother. Ransom. They'd found the sanctuary. I had 3 days to pay or they'd turn him over to the Clearwater Pack. Den Echo Takramata. I don't have the money. My voice cracked. I pressed my palm over my mouth, trying to muffle the desperation, the guttural melody of the old words that rolled off my tongue like a song I'd been born knowing. Paracalo, Paracalo, dos mal ligo chrono. Please, please, give me a little time. I ended the call, blinking back the burn in my eyes. When I turned around, the room was silent. Not the comfortable silence of men conducting business. The predatory silence of wolves who'd just caught an unfamiliar scent. Every pair of eyes was on me. But Alexandro Volkov wasn't looking at me like a server anymore. He was standing now, having risen from his chair without a sound, and his amber eyes were blazing with an intensity that made my knees weak. His head was tilted slightly, like a wolf hearing a frequency no one else could catch. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but it filled the entire room. What did you just say? I opened my mouth, closed it. My pulse hammered in my throat. I'm sorry, sir. Personal emergency. It won't happen again. The language. He took a step toward me, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. What language were you speaking? Every instinct screamed at me to lie. But I'd never been a good liar, and I'd certainly never been able to lie to an alpha. Greek, sir. His eyes narrowed. That wasn't Greek. One of the other wolves, a silver-haired alpha with a scar through his eyebrow, leaned forward. Volkov, what's going on? But Alexandro didn't take his eyes off me. He moved closer, each step deliberate, until he was close enough that I could see the tattoos on his neck shifting, the ink almost seeming to move under his skin. Say something else, he commanded. I don't.
Say
Something
else.
The alpha command slammed into me like a physical force, and my mouth opened before I could stop it. Den Catalaveno. I don't understand. He inhaled sharply, and I watched something flicker across his face.
Shock.
Hunger. Recognition. Then he turned to his beta, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. Don't let her leave. The SUV that took me from the silver crate had blacked out windows and smelled like pine and gunpowder. I sat in the back seat between two enforcers who hadn't spoken a word since we'd left the city limits. Alexandro Volkov sat in the front passenger seat, his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped Russian that I pretended not to understand. We'd been driving for 40 minutes when the forest opened up to reveal the Northern Heights fortress. It wasn't a mansion.
It was a statement.
Stone and steel rising from the mountainside like it had grown there, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the moonlight. Guard towers flanked the entrance. I counted at least a dozen wolves patrolling the perimeter. They led me through corridors of polished marble and dark wood, past portraits of silver-eyed ancestors, until we reached a study that smelled like old paper and alpha dominance. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls. The fourth was nothing but glass overlooking the valley below. Alexandro stood at the window, his back to me, hands clasped behind him. The door closed with a final sounding click. We were alone. Sit, he said without turning. I sat in the leather chair facing his desk, my hands folded in my lap to hide their shaking. Minutes passed. The silence stretched until my nerves were screaming. Finally, he turned. Those amber eyes pinned me in place as he moved to the desk, leaning against it with his arms crossed. Up close, the tattoos on his forearms were clearly visible, ancient Greek letters woven into geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with their own light. Tell me about your mother. Not what I expected. She died when I was 12. How did she know the old tongue? I don't know what you're. Don't. His voice dropped to a growl. That language you spoke hasn't been used in 3 centuries. It was the language of the first wolves, the ones who walked with the moon goddess herself. Only the oldest royal bloodlines still teach it, and even then, only to heirs. So I'll ask again. How did a human waitress learn to speak it fluently? My throat went dry. My mother taught me. She said it was our family's language. That's all I know. He studied me for a long moment, then pushed off the desk and moved to one of the bookshelves. He returned with a leather-bound scroll, ancient and delicate, and placed it on the desk between us. Read this. I leaned forward. The text was Greek, but not modern Greek. The letters were older, the syntax different. And yet, as my eyes moved across the page, the meaning bloomed in my mind like I'd written it myself. It's a treaty, I whispered, between the northern Pax and the Moon Court, signed in blood under the harvest moon of. I squinted at the date. 1847. Alexandro's expression didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. You can read it. Yes. Can you write it? I met his eyes. I've never tried. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze calculating. Then he moved to the chair behind his desk and sat, steepling his fingers beneath his chin. Here's what's going to happen, Olivia. You're going to stay here in this fortress, under my protection. You're going to translate every scroll, every treaty, every scrap of text written in the old tongue that I give you. And in exchange, I will pay off your brother's debts and move him to a facility so secure that not even the moon goddess herself could find him. My heart lurched. You know about my brother? I know everything about you now. The Clearwater Pack. Your escape. Your suppressants. The sanctuary. He leaned forward, his eyes burning into mine. I also know that if you walk out of here, you'll be dead within a week. Alpha Silas has already put a bounty on your head. A human who speaks the old tongue is worth more than gold to the right buyer. Fear coiled in my stomach. And if I say no? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It wasn't kind. You won't. They gave me a room in the East Wing with a view of the forest and bars I couldn't see, but definitely felt. A guard stood outside my door 24 hours a day. Not a prisoner, Alex had said. A guest. Guests didn't usually require armed supervision. On the third morning, a she-wolf named Kira brought me to the archive room. It was circular, built into one of the fortress towers, with scrolls and manuscripts stacked on tables that lined the curved walls. Dust motes danced in the shafts of morning light that streamed through narrow windows. Alexandro was already there, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He didn't look up when I entered. Start with the Northern Treaties, he said, gesturing to a stack of scrolls. I need to know what concessions my grandfather made to the Canadian Pax. I took the seat across from him and pulled the first scroll toward me. The old tongue whispered across the parchment, and I began to read aloud, translating as I went. Alex listened in silence, occasionally stopping me to ask for clarification or to repeat a phrase. Hours passed. The morning light shifted to afternoon gold. Kira brought coffee that went cold on the table between us. It was on the fifth scroll that I noticed it. A symbol repeated 3 times in the margin, a geometric knot wound around what looked like a crescent moon. I'd seen it before. My eyes flicked to Alex's forearm, to the tattoos that disappeared beneath his rolled sleeve. The same symbol. Exactly the same. What is it? He asked without looking up from his notes. This mark, I said, pointing to the scroll. It's on your arm. That got his attention. He set down his pen and leaned forward, studying the parchment. Then, without a word, he rolled his sleeve higher. The tattoos covered his entire forearm in an intricate web of symbols and geometric patterns, all rendered in black ink that seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. And there, just above his wrist, was the crescent knot. They're the same, I breathed. Keep reading. I forced my eyes back to the scroll. It says, the mark of the lunar covenant binds the speaker to the throne. Only those who bear the ink may hear the voice of the ancestors. I paused, my heart hammering. This is about you. You're marked. Alex was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and moved around the table until he was standing beside my chair, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. Touch it, he said quietly. What? The mark. Touch it. My hand trembled as I reached out. The moment my fingertips brushed his skin, the tattoo blazed with silver light. I gasped and tried to pull back, but his hand caught my wrist, holding me there. The symbols on his arm began to move, shifting and rearranging themselves like living things. The same words from the scroll appeared along his forearm, glowing bright enough to hurt my eyes. Den I my manos, I whispered without thinking. I am not alone. The light pulsed once, then faded. But the warmth remained, spreading from where my skin touched his, racing up my arm and settling somewhere deep in my chest. Alex hadn't moved. His amber eyes were fixed on my face with an intensity that made my breath catch. We were close enough that I could see the silver flecks in his irises, close enough to smell the pine and smoke scent that clung to his skin. You feel it, he said, and it wasn't a question. I did. God help me, I did. A pull I couldn't name, a recognition that went deeper than logic. My mother's voice echoed in my memory, The moon goddess chooses, little one. And when she does, even humans cannot deny her. I pull my hand back, and this time he let me. But the warmth didn't fade. What does this mean? I managed. Alex turned away, rolling his sleeve back down with deliberate movements. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. It means you're more dangerous than I thought. The attack came at midnight. I was in the archive room, unable to sleep, translating by lamplight when the first explosion shattered the western wall. The entire tower shook. Scrolls tumbled from tables. The lamp flickered and died, plunging me into darkness broken only by the orange glow of fire through the windows. Alarms screamed through the fortress. Wolves howled in the distance. Then closer, much closer. The door to the archive burst open. Not Kira. Not Alex. 3 wolves I didn't recognize, their eyes glowing gold in the darkness, their canines already descended.
Rogues.
I could smell the madness on them, the unwashed stench of wolves who'd rejected pack law. There, one of them growled, pointing at me. The human. Silas wants her alive. I backed toward the window, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. There was nowhere to go. 3 stories down to stone courtyard. 3 wolves between me and the door. The first one lunged. I screamed, and the word that came out wasn't English. Stay so. The air cracked like lightning. The attacking wolf froze mid-leap, suspended 3 feet off the ground as if he'd been caught in invisible amber. His eyes were wide with shock, his mouth still open in a snarl, but he couldn't move. Couldn't even blink. The other 2 rogues stared at their frozen companion, then at me. What the hell? One started. Stay so. I screamed again, the old tongue pouring from my mouth like a river breaking through a dam. The remaining 2 wolves locked in place, their bodies rigid, their eyes rolling in panic. I stood there shaking, my hands outstretched, not understanding what I'd done or how to undo it. The word had come from somewhere deep and primal, a place I didn't know existed inside me. The door slammed open again. This time it was Alex, blood splattered across his white shirt, his eyes blazing gold. His beta and 4 enforcers flanked him, weapons drawn. They stopped dead when they saw the frozen wolves. Alex's gaze swung to me, then to the suspended rogues, then back to me. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, understanding, and beneath it all, hunger. Olivia, he said carefully, like he was talking to a spooked animal. What did you do? I don't know. My voice broke. They came for me and I said, a word of binding. His voice was barely a whisper. He moved closer, circling the frozen wolves like they were museum exhibits. This is impossible. Words of binding require years of training. Bloodline connection to the lunar court. You're human. I know that. Tears burned my eyes. My hands were still shaking. I don't know what I did. I don't know how to stop it. Alex was in front of me now, his hands on my shoulders, grounding me. Look at me.
Breathe.
The binding will fade when you stop feeding it power. I'm not feeding it anything. Yes, you are. You're terrified, and your fear is fueling the command. Breathe, Olivia. Let it go. I closed my eyes and tried to slow my racing heart. Gradually, I felt something loosen inside me, like a fist unclenching. A sound like breaking glass filled the room, and the 3 rogues crashed to the floor, gasping. The enforcers were on them in seconds, silver chains snapping around wrists and throats. Alex hadn't let go of my shoulders. His amber eyes searched my face with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare. You're not a translator, he said quietly. You're a lunar speaker. The first one born in 300 years. I shook my head, but even as I denied it, I knew he was right. The power humming beneath my skin, the way the old tongue shaped reality when I spoke it, This was what my mother had been hiding, what she'd died protecting. Silas will never stop hunting you now, Alex said. His grip tightened. Do you understand? You're not just valuable. You're irreplaceable. The sacred grove was hidden deep in the Northern Heights territory, accessible only by a narrow trail that wound through ancient pines. Alex led me there 2 nights after the attack, when the moon was full and heavy in the sky.
No guards. No beta.
Just the 2 of us, and the sound of our footsteps on moss-covered stone. The grove itself was circular, ringed by white birch trees whose bark gleamed silver in the moonlight. At the center stood a stone altar carved with symbols I recognized from the scrolls, the language of the first wolves, etched by hands that had been dust for centuries. This is where the Northern Alphas have been crowned for 8 generations, Alex said quietly. The ground here remembers every oath, every challenge, every drop of blood spilled in the moon goddess's name. I moved toward the altar, drawn by something I couldn't name. The symbols seemed to pulse with their own light, responding to my presence. Try to read it, Alex said from behind me. I placed my palm flat against the cold stone. The words bloomed in my mind, not just their meaning but their weight, their power. Those who lead must first serve. Those who command must first listen. The moon chooses her champions not by birthright, but by sacrifice. I traced the carved letters with my fingertips. This isn't just a coronation oath. It's a binding contract. Yes.
His voice was closer now.
I turned to find him standing just behind me, close enough that I could see the conflict warring in his amber eyes. I wasn't supposed to be here, Olivia. I was the second son, the spare. My brother was groomed for the throne from birth. What happened to him? Silas happened. The words came out like shattered glass. 10 years ago, during a peace summit, Silas orchestrated an ambush. My father and brother were killed. I was 23, untrained, unprepared. The pack should have fractured. But the night of their funeral, I came here to demand answers from the moon goddess, and these appeared. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing the tattoos that covered his forearm. In the moonlight, they glowed with soft silver luminescence. They burned themselves into my skin while I knelt at that altar. Every symbol, every word of the covenant. The pack elders said it was the moon goddess marking me as her chosen. But I've always wondered if it was just desperation, the last resort of a pack that had no other option. I reached out without thinking and placed my hand over the marks. They flared with light, warm beneath my palm, and I felt the connection between us snap tight like a tether. It wasn't desperation, I said softly. You can feel it, can't you? The way the ink recognizes the old tongue? You were chosen, Alex. Just like I was. He caught my wrist, but instead of pulling my hand away, he held it against his skin. His other hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. Do you know what you are to me? His voice was rough, barely controlled. Do you understand what it means that your touch makes the covenant marks burn? I did. Every instinct I'd been suppressing for weeks screamed the truth.
Mate.
The word my mother had whispered in stories. The bond that couldn't be denied or broken. I'm human, I whispered. I don't care. He leaned down until his forehead rested against mine, until I could feel his breath against my lips. I stopped caring the moment you spoke the old tongue in that restaurant. You were mine before I even knew your name. When he kissed me, the grove exploded with silver light. The message came at dawn, slipped under my door, while the guard rotation changed. A single photograph and 3 words scrawled in handwriting I didn't recognize. We have him. My brother. Tied to a chair in a concrete room I didn't recognize, blood trailing from his temple, his eyes wide with terror. The image quality was grainy, recent. On the back, an address in Silas's territory and a deadline. 24 hours. Someone inside the fortress had betrayed us. I didn't think, didn't plan. I just moved. I grabbed the emergency bag I'd kept packed since the first night, old habits from years of running, and headed for the service entrance I'd watched the kitchen staff use. The eastern perimeter had a gap in patrol coverage between 5 and 5:15. I'd memorized the guard rotations weeks ago, without even meaning to. I made it to the tree line before a hand locked around my wrist and spun me around. Alex stood there in the pre-dawn darkness, barefoot, wearing only sleep pants, his chest heaving like he'd run the entire length of the compound. His eyes blazed gold, with barely controlled fury. "Where do you think you're going?" I tried to pull free. His grip tightened. "Let me go. They have my brother." "I know." His voice was deadly quiet. "I got the same message 15 minutes ago, along with photos of 3 other pack members' families. It's a trap, Olivia." "I don't care." The words ripped from my throat. He's 12 years old, and he's terrified, and I promised I would protect him. I promised. And running into Silas's arms will save him how exactly? Alex's other hand caught my shoulder. "You think he'll just hand your brother over once he has you? He'll use you to unlock every ancient weapon the first wolves buried. He'll bleed you dry extracting words of power. And then he'll kill you both anyway. So, what am I supposed to do?" Tears burned hot down my cheeks. "Stay here in this gilded cage while my brother dies because someone in your pack sold us out?" Something flickered across Alex's face. Pain, quickly masked. "You think I don't know there's a traitor? You think I haven't been tearing this fortress apart looking for them? Then let me go. You said you'd protect him." "I will protect him. I've already sent my best team to extract him. But I can't do that if I'm chasing you through enemy territory." His hands moved to frame my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "You have to trust me. Trust you." I laughed bitterly. "You kidnapped me. You made me a prisoner here. I am not your jailer, Olivia." His voice dropped to something raw and desperate. "I am your mate. Everything I've done has been to keep you alive, to keep you safe. Because if Silas gets his hands on you, there won't be enough of you left to bury." The words hung between us in the cold morning air.
Mate.
He'd said it out loud now, made it real with witnesses in the form of the guards who'd surely followed him. "You made that choice for me," I whispered. "You never asked what I wanted." "You're right." He didn't let go, but his touch gentled. "I didn't ask because I couldn't risk you saying no. Because I'm a selfish bastard who would burn the world down before I let anyone take you from me. But I'm asking now.
Stay.
Trust me to bring your brother home. Trust me to keep you both safe." Behind us, branches snapped. His beta emerged from the shadows, phone in hand, his expression grim. "We've located the building from the photo. It's heavily guarded, but we have a window. 30 minutes, maybe less." Alex's eyes never left mine. "What's it going to be?" I thought of my brother's terrified face, of the traitor still hidden somewhere in these walls, of the mate bond humming between us like a live wire. "Bring him home," I said finally, "but I'm going with your team. Olivia."
Non negotiable.
"He'll be terrified. He needs to see me or he won't go with them." I held his gaze. "You want my trust? Then trust me back." A long moment passed. Then Alex nodded once, sharp and final. "Gear up. You leave in 10 minutes." The extraction went wrong in the first 30 seconds. The building was empty. No brother.
No guards.
Just tripwire explosives and a recorded message in Silas's voice. "Come to Oakhaven Square. Bring the girl. Or everyone dies." We arrived to find the neutral zone transformed into a war zone. Silas had called in every rival alpha who'd ever resented Alex's rule. 50 wolves, maybe more, ringed the square with silver weapons and predatory grins. At the center, caged in silver bars, was my brother along with a dozen other hostages, children, elders, anyone Silas thought might make effective leverage. Alex's pack lined the northern edge, outnumbered 3-1. "You have something I want, Volkov," Silas called from his position near the cage. He was everything the rumors promised, scarred, brutal, with eyes that held no sanity. "Give me the lunar speaker, and I'll let these sheep live." "You'll kill them anyway," Alex growled. His wolf was close to the surface, fighting for dominance. Around him, his pack bristled with barely restrained violence. Silas smiled. "Probably. But this way, you get to watch." The first wolf lunged. Then chaos. I watched from behind Alex's line as wolves tore into each other, as blood painted the cobblestones black in the moonlight, as my brother screamed my name from inside the cage. The Northern Heights pack was skilled, but numbers didn't lie. They were being overwhelmed. Alex fought like the king he was, brutal, efficient, unstoppable. But even he couldn't be everywhere at once. I saw the moment it turned. 3 rival alphas cornered Alex against the fountain, silver blades flashing. His beta went down hard, skull cracking against stone. The hostage cage began to buckle under the weight of wolves trying to get to the easy kills inside. No more hiding. No more pretending I was just a translator. I stepped onto the battlefield. The first word of power left my lips like thunder. "Accust me. Hear me." Every wolf in the square froze mid-attack, heads snapping toward me. The air itself seemed to crystallize, vibrating with the force of the old tongue. I walked forward, and the wolves parted before me like water. My voice rose, not shouting, but resonating with a power that came from somewhere ancient and untouchable. Under the moon's light, I forbid your transformation. The words weren't mine. They came from my mother's voice in my memory, from the scrolls I'd translated, from the very ground beneath my feet. The sacred song of the moon goddess, the command that had shaped the first wolves from mortal flesh. The effect was instantaneous. Wolves midshift screamed as their bodies snapped back to human form. Silas's eyes went wide with rage as his wolf retreated behind a barrier he couldn't break. Whoever spills blood for dark purpose will lose their blessing. Silver light exploded from my throat, from my hands, from the very air around me. It washed over the battlefield like a wave, and where it touched, wolves collapsed to their knees, their connection to their beast severed. Silas staggered backward, clutching his chest. "What have you done?" I stopped 3 feet from him, my voice carrying to every corner of the square. "I have removed the moon goddess's gift from those who would corrupt it." "You wanted a lunar speaker, Silas? You wanted to use the old tongue as a weapon?" I let the power blaze in my eyes, felt the ancient words scorching through my blood. "I am the weapon, and I choose who I serve." Alex was beside me then, bloodied but standing, his hand finding mine. The moment our skin touched, his tattoos blazed to life, and I felt his wolf surge back, stronger than before. The message was clear. The moon goddess had chosen her king, and now she'd chosen her queen. The coronation took place under a full moon, in the same sacred grove where Alex had first kissed me. But this time, the clearing was filled with representatives from every pack in North America, from the Canadian territories to the Mexican border. Wolves who had spent centuries fighting over scraps of power now stood shoulder to shoulder, united under a new rule. I wore silver, not white. A gown that moved like moonlight, embroidered with the symbols from the ancient scrolls in thread that seemed to glow with its own luminescence. My hair was unbound, falling past my shoulders the way the first lunar queens had worn theirs. On my left hand, Alex's mating mark gleamed, not a scar, but silver script that had burned itself into my skin the night we bonded, matching the tattoos that covered his arms. Alex stood beside me at the altar, devastating in black formal wear, his amber eyes burning with pride and possession. He'd already been crowned king. Tonight was about something older, something that transcended pack law. The eldest of the moon priestesses, a she-wolf who claimed to be 300 years old, stepped forward with the lunar crown. It wasn't made of metal, but of crystallized moonlight, shaped by the first wolves who'd walked with the goddess herself. "Olivia Thorne," she said in the old tongue, her voice carrying across the silent grove. "You who speak with the voice of the ancients, who commanded the moon's power and stripped the unworthy of their blessing, do you accept the responsibility of the lunar crown?" I met Alex's eyes. Saw the love there, the absolute certainty. Then I looked past him to where my brother stood in the front row, healthy and whole, grinning like he couldn't contain his joy. Beside him, Kira held his hand, having appointed herself his personal guard and honorary big sister. I answered in the language that had changed everything. "Disham." "I accept." The priestess placed the crown on my head, and the world exploded with silver light. I felt the connection snap into place, not just to Alex, but to every wolf who'd sworn allegiance to the Northern Heights, to the land itself, to the ancient power that had been sleeping for 3 centuries. When the light faded, the clearing erupted in howls. Not of challenge, but of recognition. The packs had their lunar queen. Later, after the formal ceremonies ended and the celebration began, Alex pulled me away from the crowd. We stood at the edge of the grove, his arms wrapped around me from behind, my back against his chest. "Any regrets?" he murmured against my ear. I thought about the scared waitress who'd answered a phone call in Greek, who'd spent years making herself invisible, who'd believed she was broken because she couldn't shift. "Not a single one," I said, leaning into his warmth. Below us, I could see the lights of the Northern Heights fortress, no longer a prison, but a home. Hear the music and laughter of wolves celebrating a new era. Feel the power humming through my blood, no longer something to fear, but something to wield. "Good." Alex's lips brushed my temple. "Because you're stuck with me for eternity, Lunar Queen." I turned in his arms, rising on my toes to kiss him. The crown on my head caught the moonlight, and somewhere in the distance, wolves howled their approval. I was no longer the ghost who served drinks and kept her eyes down. I was the voice that commanded armies, the speaker who bridged the mortal and divine, the human-born queen who'd changed everything. And I'd never been more alive. If you enjoyed the story and want more like it, please like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support truly means the world to me and helps this channel grow. Thank you for being here.